Hello and welcome to a new video. I've already introduced some amplifiers on my channel. I've introduced 2-channel amplifiers, old, new. I've introduced 5-channel amplifiers. I've introduced DSP amplifiers and so on and so forth. But there's one type of amplifier that I've completely left out so far, and that's the monoblock. But what exactly is a monoblock? A monoblock is basically a single-channel amplifier. That means we have an amplifier that really only connects to one speaker. Usually that's a subwoofer, because a monoblock is meant for that, to really have a lot of power. But I've also seen, or rather at competitions, you often see cars 8 or 9 speakers are installed, and accordingly there are also 8 or 9 monoblocks built in. That means really one amplifier for each speaker, which naturally allows for the best signal separation. Because when the amplifiers are completely separate, then it's just, crosstalk is a bit tricky. But of course it's also about the power, meaning each amplifier needs its own power supply. And of course it's also expensive. That's why, at this point I was just looking for a monoblock for my subwoofer. My subwoofer, just a regular one in the car. I didn't know which car, and I also didn't know what kind of subwoofer. But I knew I would really like to have a monoblock to really get to utilize the power of a monoblock. You have a monoblock, usually quite decent values, handy for such a subwoofer, are useful and practical that you might even hear. So for a subwoofer, it really needs to have some serious power. So a really beefy men's amplifier, a real powerhouse, something that really goes boom. Yeah, I bought it. This here, it's somehow different, but it has power. That's why. So what I have here, it's a SoundDigital EVO X2. And here it says 3000.1 as a unit. I would say, let's take a closer look at them and check the technical specifications of the tips. So what I have here is a cute little amplifier because it's really not that big. We have dimensions of 22.7 cm, 13.6 cm, and 5.5 cm high. Cm high. So really in terms of shape, a small package that you can really work with. The thing is, not very light, but you can definitely see that it fits, hangs. You get it. When you tap on it like that. Let's clean it up. So, this little amplifier, what can this little amplifier do? First, let's take a look at the inputs, outputs, and so on. If we just take a look at this here, then we have, I'll go from left to right, we have a high level input. This means that if we don't have RCA, no low level, no RCA outputs in the radio, we can also tap into the high level speaker signals from the car radio here and convert them into the package. There are also corresponding connectors here that we can plug in with the individual wires, and then we can, otherwise we have 2 English ones for low level means it creates the automatic mono signal from that. If we only have one, we can only turn one on. We have a control knob where we can adjust the gain. Sure. We have a switchable low pass. That means we can adjust it. What frequencies should pass through here? And here we can actually adjust things, and we can set the low pass from 50 to 500 Hertz. When I turn it up, it's off. Since I want to control it via DSP, I turn it up. So at this point, nothing. That means the low pass stays off as well. Then there's also a subsonic. So, how much do we want from the bottom? How much should it let through? It's currently set to 5 Hertz. You can turn it up to 40 Hertz, but 5 Hertz. I just want to keep as much as possible in the signal. That gives us, and the last thing we have here is the bass boost. That means we get a strong boost of up to 12 dB at 50 Hertz. I'll leave that at 0. We have 3 LEDs here. And the LEDs are, first, I have the power LED. Then I have the clipping LED and I have a protection LED. Protection when something is broken or there's a short circuit or something like that. The clipping LED lights up when the input is too high. That means if we actually apply too high a voltage at the input, then the clipping LED starts to blink, and then we know, okay, we need to turn it down a bit. This is the side. Then we have another side. On the other side, there's not much to see. A speaker terminal, it's solidly built. A speaker terminal, it's relatively solidly built here at this point. We have power inputs. That means we can put in proper power cables here. The manual says we should connect at least 35 mid-hit tiles here. And we have one remote. Terminal for remote. This means that this amplifier can automatically generate the remote signal via high level. But if we go in via low level, meaning if we use RCA, we need to provide a remote signal here. Will that be no problem at all in my setup? Because the ESX DSP amplifier has a remote out, I can connect that directly here and done. At first we only see a fan here. This amplifier has a fan. It is temperature controlled. It doesn't heat immediately when powered. Speaker 1 OHM. Only when there is actually power demanded then something happens. We see here speaker 1 OHM. What does that mean? That means this is the 1 ohm version of the 3000.1 EVO X2. Ohm version of the 3000.1. Evo, X2 is... What does 3000 mean? What does that mean for us now? We had to clean this up. Power specification. 1 OHM goes to 1 ohm, speaker MP2. OHM version, which means we can go down to 1 ohm here. From the speaker MP2, the amplifier delivers 3000 watts at 1 ohm and 12.6 volts. Yes, you heard that right. This small compact amplifier delivers up to 3000 watts. RM's out. That's a hell of a lot of power for its size. So 3000 watts, I still remember monoblocks that were as big as this desk here. There weren't 3000 watts output. At 2 ohms, it still delivers nearly 2000 watts, and at 4 ohms, we're at 1300 watts coming out of this amplifier. At 40.4 volts, it's a bit more. There is the amplifier, just as big, and also as a 2 ohm version. Ohm version. That means the minimum impedance for the speaker is 2 ohms and not 1 ohm, like this. So the amplifier delivers 3000 watts at 2 ohms and 2000 watts at 4 ohms. That means we have this 1 ohm stage gone. It's wired a little differently inside. Otherwise, the thing is basically identical. So, what do you do with something like this? The best thing is add a subwoofer. That means for me, the good device simply connects in parallel to the DSP amplifier. And then I have more than enough power for the Subwoofer. What I probably won't need at all, but having is better than needing. And yes, that's actually it. All the data from this beautiful little amplifier. A real little powerhouse. Can you actually say that it's small how heavy it is and it really packs a punch? Of course, there are also many brothers and sisters from SoundDigital series. So many brothers, sisters, whatever you want to call them, in various sizes. Even more, also a little smaller. The smallest one I think is a 1600, then there's the 3000, there's a 5000, and there's a 12,000. Anything is possible. I have to say I've never had more than 600 watt subwoofer. Accordingly, yes, could be 1300, could also be interesting. And of course that makes me super flexible. So 1300 at 4 ohm is definitely enough for music listeners. That's not a problem at all. But with the amplifier, I now have options because I can also just connect a second one as well. And I'm at 2 kilo. Or I can swap something else around. All of a sudden, I'm actually getting the $3 kilo from the amplifier. So it's just endless flexibility that I have left over at this point. And for that, I install them and then I test them out. And if it's good, it stays in. If not, something else will go in. As always, just take a look at how and where it will go. The plan is definitely to install the amplifier in the car in the coming days. And then I'll probably report further how it performs. What I completely forgot. Of course, I also have a remote control for this amplifier. A remote controller for this amplifier. To get that, and in the end it's just a cable. This is this beautiful remote control. Now 2 displays, a power display and a clipping display. And here you can turn the volume up and down. I won't be installing this remote control. The amplifier itself is calibrated, and then I control everything through the DSP that I have with the controller or through the app. But this here, it's going to stay in the cupboard for now, because I really don't expect clipping. So sure, when the system is set up correctly, I don't want to mess around with the gain controller afterwards. That's what I have my DSP for. I have different presets. So it should be, and the amplifier will give a clean bass foundation, enough power that I can then be flexible with what I want. Provide enough power so that I can be flexible what I want. I'm glad you tuned in. If you have any questions about the amplifier or anything else, just leave them in the comments. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you all. Thomas.